Hey guys, today's lesson is over chapter 6.3, Biodiversity. And here's a quick overview for you guys. First, we're going to talk about what biodiversity is, what are the levels of biodiversity, why biodiversity is valuable to us, what is threatening biodiversity, and how we can protect it. Alright, first, what is biodiversity? And in general, biodiversity is just a total of all genetic variation in a given area. So you can see just like all the species, all the plants, animals, fungi, bacteria in a given area. And there's different types of biodiversity. For example, there's ecosystem biodiversity, which is just the variety of habitats, communities, and ecological processes in the biosphere. So you can have tropical grasslands or deserts or tundras, just a very wide variety of environments. There's also species diversity, which is just the diversity of species in an area, obviously. And so this is how many plants and animals you have in a given area. Like these are the animals of the African savanna. And also there's genetic diversity, which is in a certain species, just how diverse that the members of that species are. Like, for example, humans, obviously all these different diverse humans here. And then why is biodiversity valuable? Well, some wild species can be sources of medicine. For example, aloe vera there can be used for like treating burns and stuff, or penicillin, which is a very valuable antibiotic, came from a fungus originally. Also, many crop plants have wild relatives who can transfer useful genes, such as pest resistance and improved growth, to domestic relatives. So, for example, that potato right there has potato blight, and there might be a wild potato somewhere that has a gene that helps it to not have potato blight, and you could use that gene to improve your agricultural potato. Also, biodiverse ecosystems can be more stable, productive, and valuable to humans by maintaining improved air, soil, and water quality. An example of that is that in the Amazon, they just recently found a fungus that can degrade plastic. So that's very useful for humans, obviously, because we have this landfill problem, and that fungus might be able to reduce that. All right, but biodiversity is under threats, though. For example, there's habitat fragmentation, which is when human development splits ecosystems into pieces. So in this picture, you can see like there's groups of forests that are surrounded by human development of farms and like housing complexes and stuff. And this is dangerous because it keeps the ecosystem being like really healthy and having large populations. Also, hunting can lead to reduction of species and biodiversity because sometimes we hunt species faster than they can reproduce, which leads to reduced numbers or even extinction. And you can see, for example, that's whaling. And those are just a ton of whales that some Japanese people have killed probably. And whales almost went extinct in like the 1900s because we caught too many of them, but eventually whaling restrictions were placed, so whales are now safer. Also, introduced species can threaten the original species in a habitat. For example, in the Great Lakes, they've introduced lampreys, which are this little wormy thing on that fish there that they attach to fish and can kill them really easily. And they're a huge threat to the Great Lakes ecosystem because they're killing all these fish. They're not used to having lampreys around them or are evolved to fight them. Also, pollution can lead to reduction of biodiversity because, it can lead to acid rain or oceanic acidification or destruction of habitats, which just obviously leads to less space for species to live in and therefore less biodiversity. The picture is the classic example is DDT, where that pesticide, which was used to fight mosquitoes, eventually resulted in like very thin eggs and eagles, which led to them having fewer numbers. And then finally, climate change, and it's hypothesized that if global temperatures increase by 1.5 or 2.5 degrees Celsius, 30% of all organisms could face the risk of extinction. And that's Al Gore being sad. And so how can we conserve the biodiversity that we already have? And one way to do that is we can protect individual species that are under threat. For example, giant pandas are very endangered right now, and Chinese scientists are trying to breed them and make the populations larger. Or you can just conserve entire habitat/ecosystems. And usually they focus on ecological hotspots, which are places where significant numbers of species/habitats are in risk of extinction. And so obviously these are good places to put parks/preservations. For example, that's a picture of Yellowstone, which is a huge ecological hotspot, and it's in Wyoming. And also sometimes the government and other entities can offer incentives for companies and citizens to protect the environment themselves. Like, for example, Google has become greener and they've been getting like tax benefits and stuff like that from the government. And that's all.